Welcome to the Moon Manifesting Podcast. I'm Kyra Howearth, your host. Here on the show, we talk all about manifesting your dreams with the power of the moon so you can use the cosmic energy to transform your life. So chances are, if you're here, you've probably read your natal chart before, but have you ever seen your progress chart? So welcome back to the Moon Manifesting Podcast. My name is Kyra Howearth, and in today's episode, I'm going to be going deep into progress charts, what this means about your evolved needs, how to find your progress chart, all the things that you started with looking at progressions in astrology. This is super helpful if you've ever had your natal chart read, or maybe you've looked at your natal chart and it maybe hasn't exactly resonated with you for where you're at now. So if that sounds like you, keep listening because this episode will explain a lot about why sometimes our natal chart may not describe where we are at currently, and really interesting stuff. So, our natal chart is super important, don't get me wrong, and it can provide deep insights into who we are fundamentally. But it doesn't really account for how we've evolved over the years. Your natal chart is just like a screenshot, so to speak. That wasn't the word I was looking for, but a screenshot of where the stars were at the time of your birth. A snapshot might be a better word. Screenshot. We're living in the digital age. So it may not always resonate because, depending on how old you are, your natal chart is obviously as old as you are. So you've obviously evolved over the years. So the solution, if your natal chart is, maybe not feeling quite as resonant with you, is to look at your progress chart. And while your progress chart definitely does not replace your natal chart, in fact, you can use the two in conjunction with each other, I find that looking at your progress chart can serve a few purposes. One, it definitely explains how you've evolved over the years. And secondly, it is a really valuable tool for forecasting and seeing what's coming up in the future, or even explaining why events have happened to you in the past. Super exciting. We're going to be going right into progress charts in today's episode. So I am a Gemini sun, right? And I have never really felt like the typical Gemini. I was always really shy growing up. I always thought that Geminis were talkative. I thought they were outgoing. I thought they were chatty and really social. And to be honest, I was never really any of those things. I'm a bit more Gemini sun now, but I feel like I've really grown into that and learnt how to become a Gemini and embrace that side of myself. But probably for my first 30 or so years of life, that was not me at all. I was very shy, very reserved. I preferred the company of a good book rather than hanging out in social situations. And even now, I would still say that's probably quite true. I would much rather prefer to curl up with a good book than go out partying. But maybe that's just my age. But as I've grown up and become an adult and learnt more about astrology, I have realized that I am quite Gemini-ish. I'm intellectual, I can be talkative when I want to be, and I've grown into that Gemini energy. But as I learnt about progressed charts recently, I discovered something that really made a lot of sense. So on my progressed chart, I was a progressed Gemini sun only up until the age of 8. And from 8, I became a progressed Cancer. So when I think about Cancer suns, I do think about people who are maybe a little bit more quiet, they're a bit more sensitive, they're a bit more reserved, maybe a bit more intuitive. And to be honest, that kind of describes me a bit more than the Gemini typical sort of archetype is like the talky, sociable sort of person who maybe just isn't quite me. And so as I looked into this progressed Cancer sun, I also realized how much this describes me over the past few years as I was in my motherhood phase. I'm still a mum, but as a young mum, where I was doing a lot of attachment parenting, like co-sleeping and baby wearing, and lots of gentle parenting. So being a progressed Cancer sun really started to make a lot of sense. And then in about 4 years from now, my progressed sun will actually move from Cancer into Leo, which is super interesting. So I will be about 40 when this happens. And I feel like maybe by the age of 40, I'll be a lot more confident. I'll be a lot more outgoing, a bit more bold and creative and all those beautiful Leo attributes. I can really see myself stepping more into leadership as my progressed sun moves into Leo. And I feel like I'll become like a really, shining role model sort of person for the changes that I want to create in the world as a progressed Leo. So I'm really excited to see what comes up as that happens in a few years from now. So that's a little bit of like my story with like progressed suns and my intro to progressed charts. So let's look at progress charts for you now and what this means and how to find your own progress chart and all those wonderful things. So firstly, what is a progress chart and how to find it? So a progress chart, when I'm talking about a progress chart, the actual name is secondary progressions, and this is a symbolic chart where the planets move at the speed of 1 day's movement in 1 year. So as an example, the sun moves approximately 1 degree per day in real time, but in a progressed chart, the sun will move 1 degree for a whole year in a progressed chart. So I was born with my sun at 22 degrees Gemini. So by the time I was 1, my progressed sun was at 23 degrees Gemini. By the time I was 2, it was at 24 degrees Gemini, and so forth. So this is a rough estimate. It isn't exactly that, but that's a rough way to kind of figure it out. So as I said, my progressed sun moved into Cancer at about the age of 8, and then my progressed sun will move into Leo at about the age of 40. So you can see there's about a 32-year difference. So it's not exactly 1 degree per year, but close enough. So it's symbolic time. So all of the planets will move at a different speed. Not all of the planets are going to move at that 1 degree per year. On a progressed chart, they all move at their own speeds. So for example, the moon, it moves a lot faster. It is the fastest moving planet, not only in general, but also on a progressed chart. So the moon, so as the sun moves signs on a progressed chart every 30 years, on a progressed chart, the moon moves signs every 2.5 years. And we'll go into that in the next little section. Just a little bit of an intro there into the symbolic timing of a progressed chart. So the easiest way to find your progressed chart is to just bring it up on some sort of astrology software. I was talking to a friend about progress charts, and she was like, oh, but how can I find out my progress chart? Like, because I don't have the fancy software that you have, Kyra. And I was like, well, you know what? You actually don't need the fancy software, because there's a really cool website called astro.com. So you can use astro.com. It is a free website that you can use to bring up your natal chart, all sorts of different charts, including your progressed chart or your secondary progressions. So I will put a link in the show notes. From memory though, you will need to go into something like extended chart selection. You'll put in your birth details and all that sort of thing. And there will be a section there where you choose what sort of chart you want to pull up. So I think it's maybe automatically set for natal charts. You will want to go through and find secondary progressions, and that is how you will find your progressed chart. But do let me know if you get stuck. Like, you can always send me a message on Instagram or wherever else. I'm always happy to help you. So it gets really interesting though with progressed charts. If you were born under a inner planet retrograde, so I'm talking about Mercury, Venus, or Mars, probably more significantly with the Mercury, depending on the Venus or Mars retrograde. It may not be as significant. Well, it will be significant, but let me explain maybe Mercury retrograde, right? So sometimes, people are born under Mercury retrograde. There's nothing wrong with that. It can happen. But if you're born under an inner planet retrograde or any sort of planet retrograde, the planets will still move backwards in a retrograde motion on the progressed chart. So Mercury retrograde is probably the best example to use for this because Mercury retrograde is the shortest retrograde, so it may have a bit more of an effect. Whereas, I mean, if you're born in Mars retrograde, depending on the time that you were born in relation to where Mars was in retrograde, your progress chart may have Mars in retrograde for the entirety of your life. Like, I mean, it's a possibility, right? But often with Mercury retrograde, because Mercury retrograde only lasts about 21 days in real time, then on your progress chart, Mercury might only be in retrograde for 21 days. So this could explain maybe why as a child you had issues to do with communication, like perhaps you had reading difficulties, maybe you had speech issues, maybe you had dyslexia, maybe you had some sort of learning difficulties, anything like that. It could be explained if you were born under Mercury retrograde and then maybe Mercury was, still in retrograde on your progress chart until a certain age. And then maybe at that age when Mercury then went direct is when things started to improve with that area of your life. So that would be super interesting if you were born under a Mercury retrograde. Also worth checking out, like if you were born under a Venus retrograde or Mars retrograde. Probably not so significant for any of the other planets because they do move so slowly, especially on a progress chart. So you may not really see anything shifted there with those planets on your progress chart. But that's super interesting to note, though, just that those retrograde motions are observed in a progressed chart, which like I said, it can really explain some stuff. So the most significant thing that I do look for on a progressed chart when I am doing a reading, I do this in my year ahead readings, is the progressed moon. Because this does change signs every 2.5 years. So often when I'm doing a progressed chart reading, there may not necessarily be a lot of movement with the other planets on a progressed chart, but often I may get a client come to me during a year that their progressed moon is moving into another sign or another house. So this is definitely the most significant thing to look at. And your progressed moon explains your evolved emotional needs. So all of the things on your progress chart, not sure if I said this already, I probably should have said this earlier, but it's all very symbolic of your evolved needs. It's how you evolve, how your chart evolves, how your expression of your natal placements has evolved over the years. So as I said, I started off as a Gemini sun, and then through my progress chart, I have evolved into a Cancer sun, and then I will evolve into a Leo sun in a few years from now. So it's this evolution through the zodiac. So that's the same with our moon sign. Our emotional needs will evolve over time. Every 2.5 years, they'll evolve into the next sort of thing. So as the moon changes signs every 2.5 years, it does move around 12 to 14 degrees per year on the progress chart. So it is worthwhile keeping an eye on that, keeping an eye on when your progressed moon will move into the next sign or when it will move into the next house. So having an understanding of the zodiac signs and the houses will really help you here to understand, like what sort of emotional needs might be coming up. So as an example, at the moment, my progressed moon is in Capricorn in the 2nd house. So what this means for me, so I am natally a Libra moon in the 11th house. So natally, my emotional needs are to do with creating a sense of harmony, particularly within groups. Like I just really, really love it when I can bring together a group of people and create like a sense of balance and harmony between everyone in the group, making sure that everyone is fitting in, that no one's left out and all that sort of thing. So as my progressed moon has moved through the chart and my emotional needs have evolved, currently my emotional needs are centered around achieving my goals, especially when it comes to long-term goals or working like on my business and career. And to be truthful, like that has probably been a big focus for me while my progressed moon has been in Capricorn, which has been for roughly about the last 2 years. I have become a lot more serious about my business goals and that side of things, and it has been very emotionally satisfying for me. But what will happen for me soon is that my progressed moon is going to move into Aquarius, which is going to be a really exciting time because the Aquarius energy is all about like breaking free and rebellion and all that sort of thing. So I feel like for me this year, as my progressed moon moves into Aquarius, is that my evolved emotional needs will be centered around doing things differently, having that urge to break free, to be a bit rebellious, to try new things, and just not feeling restricted. So yeah, like I said, a bit exciting. So we'll see what comes up with that. At the moment, I'm currently reading The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, and he talks about our emotional needs and what we need to feel loved. And he talks about this concept of filling up our love tank, which I feel is kind of connected to this concept I'm talking about of our evolved emotional needs, that like we need to fill up our emotional needs tank, right? So while your natal moon sign can explain what you need to feel more emotionally secure and stable, but as your moon sign progresses, through your progressed chart, you'll find that you may need or desire other forms of emotional security. Like your love language may evolve throughout the years. So I feel like that's super important to be aware of as well, that your love language, so to speak, is possibly evolving as your progressed moon progresses through your chart. So other significant things to look for on a progressed chart are planets that are at either the 29th degree or the first degree, like 0 degrees. So either at 29 degrees or 0 degrees or somewhere there, the minutes can vary, but 29 degrees or 0 degrees. So what 29 degrees signifies is endings and transformation. It can also bring a sense of crisis as we do come to this ending, to this culmination of this certain progressed energy. And then at 0 degrees, it's like the start of a new chapter. It's a new beginning. So it's a real fresh energy where we're just learning how to become that next level, as we learn how to lean into that new energy. So this is really significant, and these times when planets are at either that 29th degree or at that first degree, and I know when I say first degree it sounds confusing, but it's 0 degrees, but it is like still the first degree. Hopefully that's making sense. But these are really important times because they can really signify things that really change in our lives, and it will depend on like the planet and the placement and all that sort of thing on your progressed chart. But it can be quite a significant time of your life where there is some sort of like crisis or ending or then a new beginning. So really keeping your eye out for any planets or even angles such as your ascendant or your midheaven when these are at 29 degrees or 0 degrees, because this will be super significant. So for example, I was looking at my progress chart and I realized that my ascendant is going to move into 29 degrees Sagittarius later this year. And that's going to bring an ending and culmination, maybe a crisis, to how I appear to others. Our ascendant is like our mask that we put on. It's how we appear to others. So for the past 29 years, I can really see how I have appeared quite Sagittarian. I have appeared as a bit of a wild, free-spirited hippie, so to speak. My son calls me a hippie, but I am kind of like your classical hippie. I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a herbalist, I'm an astrologer. I've been a long-term vegan as well, not quite for 29 years, but it's definitely close to that. I think I worked it out the other day. It's been like 24 or 25 years. Maybe 22 or 23. I can't do the maths right now. I'm talking, but but it's been a while, and that's definitely happened during my Sagittarius rising as a progressed rising sign. So yeah, I feel like that sort of energy may be coming to an ending for me this year as my ascendant moves into that 29th degree of Sagittarius. Maybe I'll be coming to the end of my hippie era. And then as I evolve into a progressed Capricorn ascendant, next year, I feel like that's going to bring about like the next chapter for how I appear to others, that I'm going to appear a bit more mature, a bit more serious, maybe a bit more business-like. And I also think that this kind of coincides with the fact that I'm like getting some more gray hairs. Don't know if you can see them very well here on the video version if you're watching, but definitely getting a bit more gray thanks to my wonderful genetics. So I wonder if, maybe my Capricorn rising progress chart energy will be, my grey witch era. Who knows? Stay tuned for an update on that. So yeah, some really interesting things there to look out for on your progress chart. So in summary, your progressed moon is one of the most significant things to look at, as well as looking at any planets that are at the 29th degree or at the 1st degree or at like 29 degrees and 0 degrees. Technically, when I'm saying the 29th degree, I think that really should be the 30th degree. But anyway, I think hopefully you understand what I mean here. But basically, looking at secondary progressions can really tell you a lot about your current evolved needs. So rather than just looking at your natal chart, it's kind of like how your natal chart has evolved and grown over the years and where you're at now, where you're at in that whole evolution of your chart over the years. So this can also be a super helpful tool for predictive astrology, for forecasting, especially when looking at when maybe planets are moving into that last degree or that first degree of a zodiac sign, or maybe even when planets are moving into a different house. But overall, it can just really help you understand more about those evolved needs and where you're at the moment. So progressions are just one thing that I look at in a year ahead reading. I go into so much more in a year ahead reading. So if you've listened along to this episode and maybe you've had a go at looking at your progress chart and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about this. I have no idea what I'm looking at. Let me know, because I'm here to help. I would love to read your progress chart as well as all the other fun things that I do inside a year ahead reading. Inside a year ahead reading, I look at your progress chart, your solar return chart. I look at any major transits that are coming up for you, including lifetime transits, like once in a lifetime opportunities, and so much more. You get a written report with all the key dates to keep in mind. So if there is a key date, say when your progressed moon is moving from one sign to the other or something else significant like that, you've got that all in a handy written report for you to look back on throughout the year. You also get a 1-hour call with me where I can answer any of your questions and give you a really detailed overview of what's coming up for you for the year ahead. It's super in-depth and it's really, really insightful. So if you do want to see what is coming up for you for the year ahead, make sure you click the link down there in the show notes to take you through to book your year ahead reading. Cannot wait to see what's coming up for you in the year ahead. So what did you discover from your progressed chart today? I wonder if there is something that really resonated with you. Maybe you learned something new today. Maybe, there's something that you looked at in your progressed chart and you're like, wow, that makes so much sense. I would love to know. If you can comment below on this video, feel free to comment and let me know. Otherwise, feel free to send me a message on Instagram. I always love chatting to my podcast listeners. And if you're still here and listening, I would love for you after this episode ends to just go through and give me a thumbs up or give me a 5-star rating or whatever it is that you can do on whatever platform you're listening to. Leave a review if you've got that capability. I always love your positive feedback and reviews. So thank you so much, everyone. All you listeners are so amazing. So thank you for being here. So I hope that today's episode has been really insightful. Let me know what you've learned. And for now, stay magical, stay manifesting, and stay tuned. I'll talk with you all again really soon. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Moon Manifesting Podcast. If you are curious about working with the moon, you can read my book, Moon Manifesting, or join us inside the Moon Manifesting Coven. You'll find the links in the show notes or go to kyrahowearth.com.